Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. I want to have a conversation, kind of a heart-to-heart conversation with you as a dad about what's going on with television. And I think probably one of the easiest ways for me to sort of really tease this out is to talk about superheroes. So you can see I'm wearing my Superman t-shirt. My kids picked this out for me. And I am planning on going to the gym at some point today, so I figured I'll put this on and take the opportunity to kind of just share my perspectives about what I'm seeing going on with superheroes, because I think it helps identify even a larger picture of things that are going on or not going on with media. So before I launch into this conversation about superheroes, I want to sort of shift gears here and bring in a piece of a story from a fantasy genre written by the author J.R.R. Tolkien from The Lord of the Rings. Now, some of you who have been on my channel long enough to know that I'm a super geek are going to know exactly the story I'm talking about. Of course, The Lord of the Rings was made into a hugely successful film franchise, so odds are you know what I'm talking about. Something that was edited out of the film version of Lord of the Rings, something that takes place in the book, happens towards the end of the story, and that is when Frodo and Sam and Pippin and Merryweather are just about concluding all of their adventures. The ring has been destroyed, and they're making their way back to their hometown, only to discover that Saruman has taken over their hometown. Now, again, this was edited out. If you've only seen the film, you don't know what I'm talking about. But if you read the books, you know what happened. They allude to it in a vision that Frodo has when he's looking into that pool, if you remember that scene, and they just sort of pass it off as, I think Galadriel says something to the effect of, "You're seeing things that may come to pass." And that's how they sort of write it out of the story. But in the book, this actually happens. They return home, and their hometown is basically in this horrible state of affairs, because the evil Saruman has taken over and sort of industrialized the whole town, torn it all up. It's no longer this lush, beautiful place. It sort of turned into downtown Detroit, for lack of a better analogy here. And so Frodo, and in spite of all of the crazy adventures that they've been on up to this point, they now find that after they've returned home, there's yet another battle to fight in their own hometown for the soul of their own hometown, before they can sort of return things back completely to normal. The reason this little piece of the story stands out to me is because I guess in the journey of life, now that I am a dad of young children, I find myself sort of coming back home, if you will, full circle on some things, and revisiting some of the things from my childhood after this journey of life that I've been on, and discovering that the things that were true in my childhood that made some really great memories, I find myself, like Frodo and his friends, returning home only to find the things that made home great have now been inverted and destroyed, and there's another battle to fight to return home back to what it was when I left it in the first place. In this case, for our purposes of our conversation, home being the superhero genre as it was when I was growing up as a little kid in watching television. You had, like the Saturday morning experience as a kid, growing up watching the syndication of the Adventures of Superman, right, with George Reeves. This was a television series that was filmed in the 50s, and it had that classic intro, faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, all those things, standing for truth and justice and the American way. And you saw Superman squaring off with the bad guys in the name of justice and morals and ethics, the American way of principle. Then you saw that reflected, specifically, I'm wearing the Superman t-shirt. You saw that faithfully replicated in the Christopher Reeves films that were done. There was one in 1978, one in 1980, and one in 1983. As a kid growing up watching the Spider-Man, the syndicated, remember the old Spider-Man cartoons from the 60s? It was, sort of herky-jerky animation. The voiceovers weren't really that great, but you knew what you were getting. You were getting a story about good versus evil, and good would win. And you knew what the character of even though Spider-Man was kind of the superhero that, was sort of learning because he was young and he would make mistakes, his heart was good. His moral compass was in the right place, and so good wins, over evil. Then you had, when I was a little kid, a live action TV series that came out. Some of you watching, may not even know that this was the case, or some of you might remember with Nicholas Hammond. This was produced from 1977 to 1979. He went on to make some early film versions of Nicholas Hammond did of Spider-Man. And then, of course, more famously, the Spider-Man iteration that came out in 2002 with Tobey Maguire. Of course, those of you who are hardcore into the storyline know that they changed some things about Spider-Man with that Tobey Maguire version, but it was successful, and he went on to make a couple other ones. There was one in 2002, 2004, and 2007. And then they switched over after a few years to another actor, Andrew Garfield. They did one in 2012, 2014. I'd like to just, my general observation of those versions of the film, again, that they remained faithful to the Spider-Man that those of us who grew up in that time period, read about in the comic books and remember watching as a kid on Saturday morning cartoons, the character of who Spider-Man was and what was his moral compass and what were the storylines, about. Another one, The Incredible Hulk. Again, there was a syndicated cartoon that was produced in the 60s. Again, another Saturday morning, cartoon experience as a kid growing up. And then in the 70s, they produced a live action TV show about the Incredible Hulk. I'll never forget watching this with my sister. It was produced from 1978 to 1982. This was with Bill Bixby. Of course, they changed it from Bruce Banner to David Banner for whatever reasons. But Bill Bixby plays the scientist and the sort of Hulk persona that comes out by Lou Ferrigno. This was a great TV series as I remember it. Obviously it's been, I don't even know how long since I would have seen one of these, but my memory of it was, They really captured that sort of tragic, um, superhero, where, at the end of every episode, this guy, he just wants to, he wants to be left alone. He wants to try to live a normal life, and inevitably somebody's going to come in and put him in this place where, you know, he can't. And the Hulk, comes out and ruins the town, and he has to move on to another town. And he sort of sadly looks over his shoulder at the end of every episode as he's hitchhiking off to, relocate and try to start over again. But but inevitably, even though the Hulk was, very destructive, um, it was a character that was guided by a sense of good, that he would only, sort of go into Hulk mode when he was absolutely pushed into a no-win situation, and the bad guys needed to be confronted, and this was, he was put in that corner. Um, the Batman syndicated TV series. You remember this with Adam West? Oh my gosh, filmed in the 60s, very campy, very much over the top. Um, Loved it. Good versus evil, classic, you know, superhero stuff. In 1989, uh, there was the Batman film, and this was huge in 1989 with Michael Keaton as Batman, Jack Nicholson as the Joker. That Batman sort of rebooted uh, a new interest in this character, but sort of took it into more of a gothic, dark place that breathed new life into the Batman character for many many years, and we're still experiencing this today, in the theaters. And Wonder Woman had her own TV show. Who can forget Linda Carter and Lyle Wagner, in the old Wonder Woman TV show that was filmed from 1975 to 1979. I mean, I can still hear the theme song in my head, you know, Wonder Woman, da 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 da. So these were great um, television shows, and some film versions that I've touched on here, that that parents could you could my parents could let me watch on Saturday morning, these TV shows and cartoons, because they knew that you have good versus evil, you have good winning versus evil, and the thing that makes superheroes heroes is their character. This Look, when when Peter Parker gets bit, by the spider bite, the powers that he receives from the radioactive spider don't make Peter Parker um, good. They just amplify who he is, and what makes Peter Parker heroic is his heart. He has a conscience. He has ethics. He has a moral compass, right? And he learns in that process. What makes Superman a hero? His sense of character. What makes Bruce Wayne a hero is his character. Parents could have confidence that their kids, in watching these shows, could walk away with some moral ethic that was being described in the course of the show, that it was about good versus evil and good triumphing over evil. This is what has secured superheroes the wealth to be able to buy a permanent seat at the table of American media and entertainment up until this day, up until this conversation, where the biggest moneymakers in the box office are still superhero movies. There's a reason for this. It's just that today we have something very different happening with the superhero genre. Um, and that is this. I was looking at something, an article that popped up. It says the CW network casts Ruby Rose as lesbian Batwoman. Okay. Rose, who claims to be gender fluid, will star as Kate Kane, who first appeared as Gotham City's Jewish lesbian Batwoman in 2006. I don't know what that appearance was about. Anyway, Batwoman took. Maybe they're referring to something that has happened in the comic universe here that I'm not aware of. Batwoman took over the stewardship of Gotham City during a storyline that took Batman off to another galaxy and out of his beloved city. And it's going to be a crossover event on the Arrow, the Flash, and Supergirl. The Kate Kane character will mark a 6th CW superhero series featuring a gay character. So, look, something very different is happening with superheroes. And I want to talk about it with you because I think it's important, because I'm a dad. And I'm trying to find stuff as a dad on television that I can watch with my kids. And it's difficult. You had Supergirl TV show coming out in 2015, and they've got lesbian relationships going on. They're now featuring evidently some kind of transgender character in the Supergirl show. Flash, the TV show, came out in 2014, and I just again, I don't want to get too far into the weeds on this, but I do want to say here that the Grant Gustin, if I'm saying your last name right, as Barry Allen, dude, you nail Barry Allen in this show. I don't know what all the politics or legal issues were that would have prohibited Grant from being the Flash in the film versions, of this character. But the film version of the Flash cannot hold water to the TV show version of the Flash. The actor who portrays Barry Allen in the TV show, so much better, sorry, in my opinion, than the way the Flash is presented in the film versions. Nevertheless, the Flash has drifted off into, sort of social justice territory. And there's other YouTubers who can explain this and why this is. It just, for the sake of shortening our conversation, the Arrow launched all these DC spin-off TV shows back in 2012 with Stephen Arnell as Oliver Quinn. I think the actor Stephen Arnell is a very committed actor to the role. I feel like, when it launched out, you could see his commitment to the character. The writing maybe wasn't up to par, and I've stepped out of watching the Arrow. I stopped watching a long time ago. Supergirl could not hold me past the first season, and I'm glad I stepped out now that I've seen and heard all the stuff that they're injecting into these stories. There's a series called Gotham that came out in 2014, and I can't watch it. I watching the first season, maybe the first couple of seasons, the thing that positive that I want to say about Gotham is the casting. The casting director for Gotham um, nailed the casting of the roles. Um, the actors who portray some of these, early iterations of the villains in particular, um, are really, really good. Of course, this started in 2014, and it's been a long time, years since I have, um, since I've been able to watch Gotham. It's so the language, um, the over the top graphic violence, um, the uh, the very mature themes that are woven in. I just was not comfortable watching it, and I let go of that a long time ago. Um, and now they're bringing in um, a lesbian Batwoman. So, uh, look, this makes it very difficult. Now that I've come sort of full circle in life to where now I'm a dad with small kids, and I would like to be able to share my, childhood experiences and love of superheroes with my young kids. I can't think of I can't think of a superhero show that's on television that I could watch with my kids. Not even one. Because the 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 superheroes have been so deconstructed now, so inverted, and and introducing themes that are so inappropriate for a young audience. It leaves you with left with the only thing that you can um, think now is that there is an active recruiting trying to go on of putting these social justice agenda or gender sexuality related identifying issues as front and center in these things as a way to indoctrinate and recruit young children. I mean, because look, comic book heroes, superheroes are targeted at kids. And it frankly, it kind of frightens me to think that there's a lot of parents um, out there who the only sort of cognitive thought that they've got it on is because they're so distracted and checked out and whatever with life that they're just going to flip on the TV and let the TV sort of interact with their children and go, oh, well, it's a superhero show, it's got to be good, and flip it on, walk out of the room, or go off to go do whatever. I'm telling you, it's nothing like what you grew up with as a kid. It is totally inappropriate for children. And it has very little now to do with anything about good versus evil, um, or morality or ethics. It's all about something very, very different now. And this is why you are seeing a huge movement away from people moving away from cable, net, just cutting cable, cutting ties with satellite companies, um, and just walking away from it. You see there's videos out there about the comic book industry, um, sales declining for all of the same reasons, and that is that superheroes are not heroic anymore. They're just overpowered um, you know, crazy people, and we've lost what it means somewhere along the way. While we were growing up and out doing life, and the new generations of writers came in who were either um, bored or just lacked creativity or or had an agenda going in, and have the result is now we've got um, a bunch of superhero television shows that I can't let my kids watch. If I want to watch a superhero show with my kids, I've got to go all the way back to George Reeves in the 50s, or Christopher Reeves in the late 70s, early 80s, or Adam West from the 60s, in order to be able to watch um, superhero stuff with my kids. And this is problematic. I can't be the only parent that is concerned about this issue with what's going on. You had a very popular iteration of Wonder Woman with Gal Gadot, who appears in the criticized Superman versus Batman film, but she made a kind of a headline appearance there, and then had her standalone film in 2017 with Chris Pine. I thought she did a great job, as the character. I'll never forget, though, going to the theater. We did not take our kids to this film, this Wonder Woman film, and I'm glad that we didn't. My wife and I were there. We were sitting next to my sister and her teenage kids. Well, I happened to be. It was this is during the in the film where they're showing all the trailers, right? And I happened to be distracted by something. I was looking at something else, and I hear my wife next to me go, "Oh my gosh!" And I looked up, and evidently I'd missed whatever it was, and I was like, "What happened?" She was like, "Never mind." They were rolling a trailer for this action film where the lead character is evidently a lesbian. So in the trailer, before they show Wonder Woman, and in the theater, as you would expect, it's Wonder Woman, right? We all Americans grew up watching Wonder Woman, on TV with Linda Carter. We know Wonder Woman's a superhero. Superheroes are for kids, and you've got parents and little kids in this theater, and they're showing a trailer where they're dropping F-bombs in the trailer. There is full-on lesbian sex going on in the trailer, which is what got that reaction from my wife. And it was just beyond the pale. It's totally inappropriate. In fact, after we walked out of Wonder Woman, my wife asked to see the manager and had a conversation with the manager about it. And my wife said, "Look, I have to believe that there was some mistake was made, because we always have a good experience coming to your theater." And then she told her about the trailer. To her credit, the manager said, "I'm so glad that you told me. I remember thinking the same thing, because we all get to, watch this in advance of the public. And I was there with my daughter, and I thought the exact same thing that you're telling me. This was very inappropriate. We are going to do something about it. Thanks for bringing it back to my attention." Um, there is something that has shifted tremendously in my lifetime that I'm trying to get across to you. And you see it very, very clearly. I think this is why I wanted to use the genre of superheroes to talk to you about it, because you see it so evidently within the superhero genre, where the superhero stories and the characters um, have have been hijacked, and are being used as a platform where they can be retrofitted and used to inject um, social justice themes, and frankly an agenda about sexual identity and gender issues that are being intentionally injected into these films and these genres, because they're geared for kids. And I guess this is a conversation to you out there who are parents or grandparents, that you've got to um, be discerning, and you've got to reject this stuff, because you cannot expose your kids. No parent who actually cares about the development of their kid is going to expose them to this stuff. The reason that it was popular in the first place, the reason that our parents let us enjoy it, was precisely because of the themes that are now entirely missing from these genres. And to the degree that they have been successful has been to the degree that they've remained faithful to the characters. That's my opinion, but I think it holds true when you look at, um, generally speaking, the success of the Avengers films, where you have, these Captain America and the Hulk and Iron Man, which, by the way, was a huge success, not only in terms of, the writing and whatnot, but a big kind of comeback role for Robert Downey Jr. He is Iron Man. It was just a fantastic fit there. Um, but that translated into so much more for characters, and to the degree that they've remained faithful to the characters as they were created, and to these principles, that what makes a hero heroic is his morals and his ethics, not the costume, not the powers, not the super suit or whatever, not the ability to hand-to-hand combat. It's the ethics. I can't be the only dad out there that has sort of trying to come full circle on this issue and enjoy something with my kids. And in order to do that, now I've got to go all the way back to the shows that I watched as a kid, because there's no version of it that's being produced now that that is appropriate to watch, with your young kids. I don't know where this is all gonna sort of play out, but again, I just wanted to talk to you about it, and hopefully there's parents out there who are watching this who this resonates with, and there's got to be some sort of messaging sent to the people who are producing this stuff, that this is not okay with us. When are we going to demand that we get to enjoy, shows that we can watch with our kids? Look, when I was a little kid, the most controversial thing on television was the Marlboro Man, the cowboy who smoked a cigarette. in the commercial. That that, that there was a self-regulation that was going on within, television, that they just were not going to put stuff, controversial stuff on TV because they knew families were watching it. You know, we get to a place, in our adult lives now where we're finally enjoying the blessing of having children, and you start thinking, "Ah, there's no way I want to explain to my little girl or my little boy, you know, Daddy, what's Viagra? With these commercials that are on, like, why is that girl rubbing a cheeseburger all over her body? There's no way I'm gonna try to explain this stuff to small children. You can't even trust what's going to come on a commercial anymore. It's just beyond ridiculous. So we just got rid of all of it and went to internet-based television, because at least we could control the content that was coming on, because you certainly can't leave a television on in the house with the stuff that's on it today. There's been a huge shift, and I guess that's why I brought up the whole like Frodo thing at the beginning. We're coming back full circle. We're trying to establish a home in our home, an environment that is conducive to healthy family relationships, and that is a safe environment and a healthy environment to raise children in. And I would love to see superheroes that are heroic because they are moral, because they are ethical, because they are good. Thanks for bearing with this really long video and listening to my ramblings and rantings. If anything that I said resonates with you, whether you agree or disagree, feel free to comment below. Thanks for watching. Have a great week.